Hello, Joel Tadman here from Golf Monthly, and as you can see in my hands I've got TaylorMade's new GAPR range. I think it's called, it's spelt GAPR. It doesn't stand for anything, but it does represent a trio of clubs designed to fill the gaps in the top end of your bag. We know a lot of amateur golfers like to replace their long irons with more user-friendly hybrids, and while there is a hybrid looking club amongst this range, there's also a couple of different options as well to provide unique performance characteristics depending on the situations on the course you're going to be using these clubs and the type of ball flight and levels of forgiveness that you're after. Like I mentioned, there's three models. Across all three, we've got speed foam inside the heads here. So that's designed, as we know, from the P790 irons to dampen vibrations and improve the sound and feel. Also support the face a little bit in generating ball speed. We've got low CGs here as well, and that's also going to provide a lot of ball speed and help the ball get up in the air a little bit easier. That said, as the name of GAPR Low suggests, you're probably not going to hit this club especially high, and that's because it's designed to provide a low penetrating ball flight, mostly for golfers off the tee. We saw a few golfers at the Open Championship recently put one of these in the bag, including Tiger Woods. That's because it's going to provide a low penetrating ball flight off the tee that's going to run a long way when it lands. All three of these clubs are adjustable for loft, so while they come in slightly different lofts depending on the club that you pick, you can obviously adjust those up or down 1.5 degrees to really fine-tune the trajectory that you're after for these clubs. And that's what these clubs are all about. It's all about getting the right ball flight for you, whether you want to see a higher ball flight into greens or a lower ball flight off the tee that's going to run a little bit more. So let's take you through each of the clubs. Before we talk about the performance, we did hit these clubs on the GC Quad launch monitor this morning, so I've got some dry ball data for each of these models. Let's just talk about the looks of these clubs. So we'll start with the GAPR Low. Like I mentioned, this is the most intimidating to hit down by the ball, no question. It's the most compact, there's not much offset there. It's clearly built to get the ball low and running. I actually quite enjoyed hitting this club off the tee, but we'll come on to a second about why I probably wouldn't play it. Moving up from that, we've got the GAPR Mid. Now for me, this is the most curious offering of the three because it is generally a mix between a long iron and a hybrid. It's got a wider sole, thicker top line, and as you look down at it at address, you can see much more of the back of it, and you can also see this little white arrow here behind the top line. And for me, that only helps position the ball centrally in the face, but also actually promoted me to take the club head more away on the inside. That might not necessarily be a good thing for some golfers, but that's certainly what it encouraged for me. So while it is gravitating more towards a hybrid looking club, it does have a flat face. So it kind of looks like an iron in the front section, but then towards the back looks more like a hybrid. Again, with that white scoreline on the bottom, it's very easy to align. And for me, it wasn't overly clunky or fussy. It was relatively simple to align and promoted a lot of confidence down by the ball at address. And then finally, we've got the look of this GAPR High hybrid club, I guess you could call it, or a rescue. For me, this is way too busy. I mean, looking down at address, there's an awful lot going on. You've got that drop crown, the white arrow, the adjustable hosel, the kind of slight contrast between the face and the crown. But the thing I really don't like about this, the look of this GAPR High, is how the top line seems to be at a very different angle to the leading edge. So while the leading edge, the groove, you can see the white groove here on the bottom, might be pointing at the target, that top line seems to point an awful long way to the right. And I don't know if this is the fact that it's slightly more lofted, but I would prefer those to match up a little bit more closely. It just looks a bit strange, so possibly not for me, but we'll come on to the performance of these clubs to see if they are for me. So let's have a look at the data we got from the GC Quad at Foresight HQ. So I've got the iPad here with all my GC Quad launch monitor data from this morning. I tested them in the new KBS Hybrid 80 shaft in standard stiff, and the low and the mid were in 18 degrees, and unfortunately I wasn't provided with a similarly lofted high model, so that was a 22 degree lofted down 1.5 degrees to 20.5, so slightly higher loft with that club. So not a direct comparison with the other two, but hopefully you'll find the data interesting nonetheless. So starting with the low, you can see the low and the mid provided exactly the same ball speed for me on average of 138 miles an hour. As I expected, because the mid is slightly larger, there's a little bit more weight low and back in the head of that club. It did launch the ball a little bit higher at 10.2 degrees compared to 8.5 with the low, which is obviously incredibly low for an iron. The low did spin the least at 3,000, mid spun a little bit more, but you can see a big jump up in the peak height there from the low at 19 yards, which is incredibly low, and 23 for the mid. So that's still quite low, to be fair, but obviously noticeably higher than the low option. And as a result, because it was a higher ball flight, I was getting slightly more carry distance with the GAPR mid at 215 yards compared to 212. So noticeable differences in performance there. I guess the other noticeable thing you can see is the difference in the descent angle with the mid was incredibly steeper compared to the lows, over 4 degrees steeper, so you are going to get more stopping power with that mid option. Let's move on to the GAPR high. Ball speed was very similar, 137. Actually, ball speed was similar across all three. As expected, it's a hybrid. It's going to get the ball up in the air a little bit easier. It certainly did that, launching at 12.8 with a much higher ball flight, peaking a 31 with a touch more spin at 4,000. So generally pretty good numbers across the board. Carry distance is actually down, but obviously you'd expect that given the loft is a lot higher at 210, and the descent angle was much steeper. You know, these hybrids really get the ball up in the air incredibly easier, and this is unquestionably a club that's designed for use into greens. It's going to stop the ball quickly, get the ball up in the air a lot easier, and it is generally a lot more forgiving. So hopefully that's given you a pretty good idea about how these clubs perform. But I'm going to give you my summary now about what these clubs are all about and who they're aimed at and why you might lean towards one over the other. Unquestionably, the GAPR low is the club that you want to be using if you want to hit bullet stingers down the fairway. Maybe you play a tight course and you need to keep the ball in play, or maybe you play a links course and you need to get the ball running under the wind. This is the club that's going to deliver that. It's no wonder that Tiger Woods chose it for the Open Championship. For me, it didn't seem to be massively user-friendly. Felt like it had quite a lot of fade bias built in. I'm not sure if that was the lie angle or just the way that the weighting is assigned inside the head, but tended to miss right a little bit with this club, even though the loft was adjusted higher, which in theory would shut the face a little bit. So was surprised to see that, but did hit some good shots with it. And when you do nail it out of the middle, you get an awful lot of run at it, not far short of where your 5-wood or your 3-wood might go in total, given the difference in ball flights and running out. So a very impressive club. The next one is the GAPR mid. For me, this was the best of both worlds. I like the kind of general sizing of it, makes it kind of playable off the fairway, but it still provides a relatively penetrating ball flight off the tee. And if you get to a course where you want to think you're going to be hitting it more off the tee, you can adjust the loft down a little bit to make it more playable in that scenario. And that's the great thing about all these clubs, but especially that mid. If you've got it in the 18-degree option, which I've got here, you know, you can adjust it down to 16.5, which would make it a great option off the tee, or you can adjust it up to 19.5, which would be a great option as a hybrid replacement into greens. So it really does give you the best of both worlds, and it's a really versatile offering. I like the look of it, inspires a lot of confidence down the ball, looks like an iron, but kind of has the forgiveness and playability of a hybrid. I'm not a massive fan of the screw on the bottom. It does gather a little bit of dirt, but aside from that, it was a very versatile, impressive offering, and definitely my favourite of the three. Finally, the GAPR high is obviously a high launching club. For me, it doesn't look the best. There's a lot going on there, and I found it difficult to align. But that aside, the playability of it was very good. I found it very forgiving, got the ball up in the air very easily, and will be definitely a godsend into greens. And I can definitely see golfers mixing and matching with these clubs. So maybe having a GAPR high in the 22 to replace their 4-iron, and then maybe even a GAPR mid slightly down from that to give them a little bit more distance, maybe have more of an option off the tee. So definitely scope to combine the two with these clubs, no question. For me, the GAPR low is only really for competent players, very good ball strikers, people who tend to hit the ball quite high and need a lower lofted option. This is the one for them. Both of these, the other two, the mid and the high, are much more forgiving, much more user-friendly, definitely more suited for the average player. Unquestionably, the high is more forgiving, but for me, the mid is definitely the most versatile for different situations out on the golf course. Hope you enjoyed that review of these 3 clubs. As always, click the like button if you haven't already, and comment on the video. What do you think about the looks of these clubs? They've got this black PVD finish on here, which I think looks pretty good. I'd probably prefer more of a chrome finish, but there's no question the black is very trendy at the moment, and a lot of you guys are going to like that. So let us know what you think. We'd love to hear from you. Hope you enjoyed that review, but for now, from a sunny West Hill, it's goodbye.